Welcome. All right, so tonight it's another Tuesday talk. So this is my second Tuesday talk that I've done. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So this is last week we looked at different ways of being. However, tonight we're looking at slowing down overthinking. So I have some notes to share with you guys that I've been thinking about throughout the week. So that's kind of what we do here on Tuesday Talks is I'm just kind of thinking about different ideas throughout the week, and I try and use them, in my own self-development journeys, my own meditations. I think about these kind of things when I go for walks too and stuff like this. So I just find myself sharing these ideas. So that's what I do these Tuesday Talks for. Also, you can ask questions if you're on YouTube. Also, you can join on Zoom as well. You can check out my Facebook page, The Spiritual Download, if you want to join the Zoom meeting. All right, so first, overthinking. What is it? What is overthinking? And then we're going to dive into some ways that we can overcome or improve our overthinking and have kind of more of a mind that's more slowed down, a little bit more calm. So I have some notes here. The first thing is I want to define and think about what the mind is. So the mind, of course, is related to thinking, very related to thinking. And if we think about it, it's our entire thoughts. It's all of our thoughts that we can have. It's the thoughts that we can have. So it's the arena. The mind is the arena in which our thoughts and our thinking patterns happen within. So that's what I have written down. The mind is the arena in which our thoughts and thinking happen within. So that's what our mind is in total. Now our mind can be connected to the future, to the past, or to the present. So the first thing is when we think about the past and the future, however, when we're away from the present moment, that's when we start to have the idea of rumination and overthinking. So overthinking is a lot like rumination. You're preoccupied and worried about certain things. So that's what our minds tend to do is we tend to worry about work, both what we did last week. Maybe we were tired last week, we didn't put our fullest effort into work, and now maybe we're a little bit worried about like getting fired or having a lot to do next week. So it's kind of a worry about the future. That's also with finances. So with money, there's a lot of worry about money, about towards the future as well. I'm a school teacher. I don't make that much money, so usually I'm thinking about where's my money going to go this month? How can I save money and things like this? And then the past. So our past relationships, worrying about the past is another thing. And like for example, having big regrets of things that we either did do or did not do. So we can even regret having not done things as well. So whatever that looks like for you. Okay. So organize. So the next thing I want to look at in what the mind is or what overthinking is this idea of useful versus useless thinking. Okay, so we've talked about so far what thinking is, but now we can think of it as either it can be good or bad, or useful or useless. So I mentioned this, but the useless thinking is the worrying or the worry-based thinking. Again, thinking about the future and thinking about the past and being out of the present moment, basically. And it tends to be our ego mind that is kind of scheming and really judging and interpreting life. So that's our ego as well. So not just the mind, but the ego is there with it, really not knowing exactly what to do or how to react in life. So it has kind of like an agenda. That's kind of the idea of the ego, is it has an agenda in life, and it's usually a kind of an immature agenda. Our ego mind tends to have an immature and it's very connected to subtle addictions, which we'll talk about down below. But we have many, many subtle addictions in our lives. Not just if you have big addictions, that's hard to get over, very, very hard to get over. But most of us don't have a big addiction. It's more that we have many subtle ones. So the question is, how can we have fewer, and how can we have more how can we make these subtle addictions into very minor, very, very minor addictions where you almost no longer have that addiction? Again, we're not striving for perfection here, but we are trying to like reduce those subtle addictions that we have. Now, useful, even egoic thoughts could be useful in the sense that does it help you survive? Does it help you survive? And does it help you thrive? So surviving and thriving in the world. So the mind really is kind of built for human beings to survive and thrive. And of course, you want to do both. We're not trying in spirituality and self-help and things like this, right? Our goal is to thrive. But to get to thrive, we have to survive first. So our mind can actually help us do that because we have different thinking patterns that we've maybe been taught from our parents and school and at work and college. It's kind of like your method of survival. You know, a long time ago, indigenous people, hunter-gatherers, they learned the strategies that they needed to survive. You know, hunting and gathering food and building camps and things like this. However, we're kind of living in this age, you know, the less than 1% of human history, you know, where we're living in cities or living in suburbs, and we have to go to work, and we have to catch the train or drive a car. And these are kind of, you know, what we would determine as modern and maybe better. Some of us might assume that our lives are better than when we were hunter-gatherers. But what if, you know, what if our issues have just switched or changed, and that really we still have the same amount of problems, they're just different? And so in the modern times, we might even have even more worries because there's so many things that we have to get done. We're kind of always busy. So one of the things is how do we simplify our life? So the next thing is moving to now how can we, you know, improve our overthinking? Because again, overthinking just leads to worry and doesn't lead to a very spiritual way of feeling or a self-help, like feeling really good and happy kind of feeling. So getting over that, one of the keys. So in the 8 limbs of yoga, so this is the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. 2 of the 8 yogas, the limbs of yoga are called yama and niyama. Basically, these focus on self-help. So that's not quite related to spirituality, more just self-help in the sense that one of the key things is we need to organize and simplify our life to reduce the amount of thoughts that we have. So it could be that in the past, indigenous people and hunter-gatherers, they maybe didn't have the same amount of worry-based thinking that we have today. Like we could actually have more problems, even though there might be about thriving. They might be first world problems. But really, if you think about it, people who live in like a cabin in the middle of the woods, or if you're a hunter-gatherer from 10,000 years ago, it could be the case that you have fewer issues or that your life is more simple, so that actually you do have fewer problems and you have less, you don't have to think about those problems as much. You might not have to think about those. So really simplifying your life and organizing it, and that might lead to a more routine way of living life where you kind of know what to expect for that day. So you don't really have to worry about what could happen. You basically have your food already taken care of. You don't have to think about what you're going to do for dinner. You're also not worried too much about money, because perhaps you go to a 9-to-5 job, or you're making money on the internet, or things like this, or you live like in an ashram or something where food is taken care of, your house is being taken care of. So really just organizing your life is the way to have fewer thoughts to think about in the first place. Okay. Next is letting our thoughts just flow through our awareness. Okay, so this is kind of getting to the idea of mindfulness. So mindful is actually not quite what we're looking for. We're looking for lack of thinking, or lack of mind. So mindful is not really the correct term for this, because really it's about emptying the space of awareness, emptying the mind, and having these thoughts just flow through, right? They either might kind of come in and they leave from above to below, or from below to above, and you just kind of watch them flow by like clouds in a blue sky. So the idea of the mind is, we want a clear blue sky as much as possible, but sometimes there's big clouds and big storms. But just kind of seeing that that's just part of life, that sometimes we do have a lot of thoughts, other times we don't, but generally trying to focus on the big blue sky rather than all these clouds. So letting these thoughts kind of flow through the body is important. And related to that, we have to see that we aren't the mind. So the mind again is a tool. Right? The mind is a tool for having useful thinking. Right? Useless thinking, we can learn to let that just kind of pass through. And that takes time. That might take 10, 20 years of Zen meditation, or 10, 20 years of Hatha yoga to get past those thinking patterns, of having unhealthy thinking patterns. All right. Hello, Cyrus Black. Welcome back. So letting those just kind of flow through, and that takes a lot of practice. So just kind of seeing that maybe your thoughts are kind of like a train, and just kind of watching the train pass by, and not needing to attach to those thoughts, seeing that those are perhaps useless thoughts. Now we can hold on to the useful ones, but only for a while, only to do, maybe you have a short goal for that day. Maybe there's something you want to accomplish that day. Or like at work, for example, I'm a teacher, so I get 100% focused into grading these papers, and that might take me 2 hours with maybe 2 or 3 breaks during that 2-hour period of grading. But I'm very, very focused on it. I'm not thinking about anything else. Really, I'm just fully invested in accomplishing the task at hand. And I have thinking patterns, right? Like I've been putting in grades in the grade book. I've been doing that for like 6 years. So I kind of have an idea as to how to do that. So really, I can just kind of do it automatically. And that's kind of a good feeling. And that's kind of the advantage of, this is part of the yama and niyama self-help part, is finding a career that you enjoy, right? So that you're not thinking about, when should I leave work? So really finding a job that you enjoy. Usually that's a job that you're good at and that you're passionate about. So looking for a career path. So not maybe taking a job in the short term just to make enough money, but having that wherewithal or that long-term plan of finding a career that gives you joy and something that you're good at. So you might need to actually build up the skill to get that career, but really having that be your long-term goal. Like for example, if your long-term goal is to teach Spanish, you have to start studying Spanish for like 3 hours a day. Okay, so setting a goal. So you might go to work for 8 hours a day. You come home, maybe take a walk to stay healthy, but then you're studying Spanish for 3 hours because you have that inner drive to accomplish something in 5 years from now, right? So that's actually going to be part of something I have down below, which is setting short-term goals that you can overcome and achieve. So then you're not thinking about all of these worries that you have. You're not also ruminating over useless thoughts. you get more invested in like accomplishing these step-by-step processes of learning another language or getting healthier, just kind of setting short-term goals and not just long-term goals. Some people, like for myself, I right when I heard about enlightenment, I knew I wanted that. I wanted enlightenment. But that's too big of a goal because you have no idea when it could happen. That could take your whole life, which for most people, enlightenment would take a whole lifetime. It does. So really start with like meditation. All right, okay, I want to achieve enlightenment, but how do I get there? Just start with a 10-minute meditation practice every day and stick with it, right? And then you can move up to 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or an hour. Now you're meditating for an hour in the morning, an hour in the evening, and that's when having samadhi states or enlightenment states of consciousness can happen for you. Is when is those long-term meditations, which takes practice and a lot of motivation and inner motivation to do that. So, all right. So yeah, we have Alexios. I start my first real job with Nestle next Tuesday. So a corporation, it's gonna suck. Yeah, working for a corporation that sells candy. I'm gonna have like 4 or less hours a day to do all the things I enjoy and value. That's unfortunate. So Alexios, I would say, like, what is your long-term goal? What do you really want to accomplish in the next 10 years? Or even what's your life goal? You might not know your life goal, but how do you see yourself in 10 years from now? How do you see yourself in 10 years from now? And start to do steps that can take you there, right? One of the things is letting go of this job eventually. Again, just take it in the meantime for making enough money. Because right, we're going from survival to thrive. So we have to get our survival figured out. And usually we need to find community to survive. Not in America, we tend to think that survival comes from the individual, and that the individual just needs to overcome all of our problems to become rich. Now, becoming rich is by investing in community and by improving yourself. So having better relationships and also having self-improvement and high self-worth and high self-esteem. Usually money just kind of comes in the long term when we get in touch with our heart and we get in touch with our mindfulness, our consciousness. So that's kind of related to what we're having here. Okay. So not letting thoughts become action or behavior is the next thing to look at. So letting those thoughts just flow through can help us not get attached to these thoughts. So this is my opinion about racism, is that racism is simply useless thinking that we've been taught from our society. Because I know people would say like we didn't learn racism in school or from home, but that's where racism is taught, is from everybody. You learn racist thinking from everybody. But again, it's just racist thinking. So it's just racist thinking, and that we don't have to act upon those thoughts. So we don't have to have thoughts become action or behavior. So behavior is just action patterns. So you might do something once, making a mistake once, but don't repeat it, right? Don't repeat that. Don't have it become behavior. And actually, that's one of the things is catching yourself while you have it. So catching your thoughts. Like notice that you're in the thought. Maybe you had a racist thought, but then noticing, oh, I don't have to act upon that thought, right? So kind of catch yourself in the thinking and notice that it's a useless thought or that it's even a racist thought. So label it and just say, yeah, that's not. You can just kind of toss that out, and then you kind of come back to zero. So that's what I have here is cutting the thoughts at the root. So thoughts kind of they're kind of like flowers or kind of like weeds. thoughts are kind of like weeds. So, some thoughts are actually useful. So those are like flowers. But other thoughts, are weeds. We just need to cut at the root and get rid of. Okay, um, so notice the thought and cutting it at its root. And then, as they say in Zen, is returning to zero, which is kind of like zero is the center of our awareness. So really recentering our awareness back to zero, which is basically the moment right here, right now, for us in our awareness. So reconnecting our awareness with our overall consciousness, and just kind of going back to the space in which our thoughts occur, and basically seeing the mind. That's called metacognition, is when you're able to see your mind from afar or from a bird's eye view. So next we have bringing awareness to other parts of the body besides the mind. Okay, so bringing awareness to your body rather than your mind. So one of the first things is changing where we focus in our head and in our mind. So one of the things in meditation is you can focus on your third eye and your crown chakra, actually. And instead of making that sound really complicated, all we do is you can actually just step back your awareness a little bit towards more of the back of your head. So putting the awareness more towards the back of your head rather than in the front, and having your eyes focused to the ground. So it's often when we're looking at the ground throughout the day or towards the ground, that means we're thinking. That means we're in our minds. If you kind of lift your eyes a little bit and you put your awareness either between your eyebrows or on top of your head or behind your head, and you just kind of have your awareness, sitting there for as long as you can, maybe just 10 seconds every once in a while, right? But eventually you're able to do it for a full minute without really connecting to your mind or your overthinking mechanisms. So that's the first part of the body that we can put our awareness to, is up and out. So instead of forward and down, towards our face, in our physical eyes, we kind of lift it up and out, or maybe even putting awareness to above our head a little bit. Next part of the body would be the heart and the stomach. So sinking our awareness, maybe loosening up our neck and our throat a little bit, but then putting awareness to our heart. Because that brings about compassion and love as well, which is another topic. But putting awareness to our heart and our chest really grounds you as well. So it's kind of like you begin to get more connected with your environment when you have your awareness in your heart. But also it's a little bit more grounding, and of course it brings you love and compassion. And then your stomach, putting awareness in your stomach and relaxing that, because we tend to hold a lot of stress in our bellies, in our stomachs. So just kind of relaxing our stomach is really important. And one of the main things that we can do is down here I have mindful breathing, or conscious aware breathing. So the breath is actually connected to the mind. Okay, I don't know how to explain that logically, but it just is. So you can practice this right now, is taking 3 deep breaths and seeing where your mind goes, and breathe into your stomach and your chest. So okay, so 3 deep breaths. It really brings you, first of all, into the moment. Second of all, it brings a lightness to your awareness, very, very, very light. And then it also calms you down. So lots of advantages, and it feels really, really good. Okay. Next part of the body. Let's see here. Otherwise, I might just putting awareness. Okay, so next is relaxing your jaw. Relaxing your jaw. When we have a tight jaw, you know, that goes to our thinking brain. You can kind of see when you tighten your jaw, right? Your eyes tend to focus and narrow. You kind of like flare your nostrils, and then your mouth gets kind of small. You know, that leads to overthinking. So again, the mind is connected to the body and connected to the breath. So having your body be relaxed relaxes your mind, right? So just keeping our body relaxed relaxes the mind. And so relaxing the mind, especially is through the jaw, where we hold a lot of tension, you know, throughout the day. So just being mindful of your jaw. And then finally, putting awareness equally to both sides of your body and your brain. Okay, so this is just something I've discovered for myself. Is I really get into the moment, or my mind really slows down when I put awareness to both sides of my body equally. So it's the value of being ambidextrous, or being able to use both of your legs in soccer, or being able to write with your other hand, or being able to eat with your other hand. Or for example, when I brush my teeth, I brush with my right and then my left. So 1 minute, 1 minute. That just leads to development of both sides of your brain, and not having all of the awareness being at one side of the brain, which that would just that tends to develop a lot of thinking patterns. So again, the goal is to get out of those patterns that we've built up, you know, for the first 30 years, 40 years of our life. So now we're on the track of being a meditator or being mindful, you know, so that brings us into kind of redeveloping the software and the hardware in our brain. So the programming that we have in our brain, we're just kind of beginning to rewire it through putting it through our awareness and being mindfully aware of both sides of the body and the brain. One thing I just discovered too is putting awareness equally through both of your eyes. That's very hard, but it actually leads to a balance in your head area is when you're putting your awareness to both of your eyes. We tend to be one eye dominant, so putting awareness to both of your eyes and both sides of your head in general. So, all right. So more ways of getting into the body is yoga and Tai Chi, or the type of Tai Chi I like is Qigong. So doing really gentle movements of the body. So yoga and Tai Chi are very good. And also going for walks. So that's what I have also is the good thing about walking and hiking is getting out in nature, is getting connected with nature. That's one of the best ways, is going on hikes, because nature tends to quiet the mind because it's just so in the moment and it's so natural. Nature is very natural. So trying to enjoy the trees and the birds, and actually focusing on it. You know, it's really easy to go on a walk and putting your awareness down to the ground, and then we're ruminating about our day, but lifting our awareness, right, and looking at the trees and the birds and the sky and the clouds, right, or feeling the breeze. You know, if it's a nice warm day, you feel the breeze touching your skin. Or if it's the winter, what I love about the winter is the really fresh air. The freshest air is the coldest air. So really enjoying those deep breaths during winter of the cold air, really breathing out there. Let's see. Okay, so I want you to think about this as well. So when we finish our yoga practice or our Tai Chi practice or walk out in nature, and then we might sit down and meditate. Right at the beginning of the meditation, I want you to think about this phrase. Be the space in which all things occur. So I'll say it again slowly. Be the space in which all things occur. Okay. So just kind of contemplate that as you're sitting down at the beginning of your meditation. Be the space in which all things occur. All right, so another one is having a positive attitude. Okay, people who are pessimistic tend to only look at they tend to overthink the bad in life. So when you see that life is actually inherently good, or it's inherently beautiful, and that inherently you don't need to worry about too much, you have that optimistic lens in life, and you just kind of are enjoying the moments and just kind of enjoying being alive. Those are the kind of people who aren't in their heads very often, are those who simply appreciate being alive. So one for all of us is getting away from internet and technology and television. If you notice, the internet and TV and technology is built to reduce your attention span. So really getting away as much as we can to things like Netflix, news, and what I mean by news is maybe knowing what's going on in the world is important, right? But a lot of people watch a little bit too much news. Really, you only need to consume like 5 minutes of news a day. That's all you need, just to know what's going on in the world. You know, it's important, but no more than 10 minutes a day. No more than 10 minutes. Because usually a lot of the things about the news, especially today, is that it's a lot about rumors and ego, and not really about, you know, actual politics, like political science. People aren't reading political science when they watch like CNN or Fox News, or even New York Times, even. So just reducing the amount of that we're on the internet. Okay, so when we get off the internet, now we can put our awareness to the quiet, the peaceful silence that's around us all the time. Okay, you can even hear it right now. This is the peaceful silence. There's kind of like a humming sound to the silence, right? So really getting in tune with that as you're going for a walk or as you're doing yoga without music. So, like I mentioned, noticing your subtle addictions. So noticing, catching yourself doing the subtle addiction or doing the thinking pattern and the noticing leads to the stopping, actually. So the more you notice, the more you actually stop being attached to that subtle addiction. So we talked about setting goals, and one thing I wanted to mention was start a new hobby. So have a goal be your new hobby and getting good at your new hobby. Again, usually I have the example of learning to having a second language. Is really it's a good hobby to have. Growing self-discipline and having healthy habits. So setting goals, starting a new hobby, things like this are part of growing self-discipline and kind of having a spiritual warrior mentality in life. So having more of a routine leads you to be more motivated in achieving these little goals that you have throughout the day. Okay, so I would say try your best to do yoga and meditation every day. It doesn't have to be for that long. If you're a very busy person and if you're brand new to it, you know, I would just do 10 minutes of yoga a day and 10 minutes of meditation a day. Just start there, right? Maybe do yoga in the morning to stretch, and then do 10 minutes of meditation right before you go to bed. Get off of your phone, get off of Netflix, you know, those last, right before you brush your teeth. Meditate in your room, then brush your teeth, and then just go right to bed instead of being addicted to our phones and Netflix. So, and one of the ways we can do this is having healthy habits. So getting away from unhealthy habits and instead focusing on diet and exercise. So I mentioned meditation and yoga, but even more foundational is eating healthy food and keeping your body healthy. So when we're very stagnant and sitting in a chair all day at our 9-to-5 job, then we kind of, I mean, it's like in physics, but whatever is in motion tends to stay in motion, is the basic idea. That's true with your muscles as well, true with your mind. is if your muscles aren't being worked and your mind is not being worked in a good way, then it starts to kind of callous. It tends to just like grow really tight, and it doesn't remain loose and full of energy. So keeping your body loose and full of energy, and your mind theoretically loose and full of energy. And again, the way to do that is to get up out of your chair, get up off the couch, go for a walk, stretch, meditate a little bit, but then eating mostly a plant-based diet, right? So reducing the amount of meat, reducing animal products, and eating mostly, fruits and vegetables, healthy bread, healthy rice, things like this. And maybe reducing the amount of sugar and salt as well. Especially refined sugar. Stuff that's in donuts and maybe our coffee. That's another one, is reducing the amount of caffeine. Caffeine tends to really make our mind really hyperventilate. We're not putting a lot of proper oxygen into our mind and brain. We're kind of living off of false energy, when we're over doing too much caffeine. If we're doing 2 or 3 cups of coffee a day, that can really lead to the sense of anxiety overall in your body. Your heart and your mind just kind of feel anxious. Okay, so and I've talked about exercise on this channel really recently, but doing exercise that isn't overdoing it. So doing really gentle exercises, maybe some lifting, some like push-ups. I found a video that I posted on Facebook about how to do a proper push-up, so it doesn't hurt your elbows and things like this. So really taking care of your body and your joints. So really having like yoga and like walking or jogging or hiking being the main thing that you do. Maybe some push-ups and sit-ups, but not too much heavy lifting, not too much. Okay, so we talked about bringing awareness into our heart, and that makes us more compassionate, and it brings our mind away from ourselves and our own ego and brings it to thinking about other people. So our goal is to think about other people. So even just the act of thinking about others actually is kind of like a prayer. Okay, it's almost the same thing to think about others and being like, I'm hoping my dad is having a good day today, or I'm sending positive vibes to my friend out in California. Just thinking about that basically is a prayer. So just really thinking about others more than you think about yourself is a really good goal to have. Really big goal. It probably won't happen until the end of your life. When you're starting to think about death, thinking about your own death, and you realize, wow, I'm just one life. I really want to build positive relationships with others in my life. Maybe when we're young, we might be a little bit too busy to be thinking about others that much. We tend to be thinking mostly about ourselves, when we're really busy at work and stuff like this. But a lot of people who are parents, who are really good parents, they're constantly thinking about others. They're just kind of living in their heart towards their sons and daughters. That's a very, very beautiful thing to do. So I also mentioned catching yourself in the thought, letting the thoughts flow through you, and having the metacognition to notice that you're being stuck in the thought and returning back to zero, or returning back to the expansive blue sky of awareness. And then finally, when you're able to do that, you can let go of your belief structures. Let go of your belief structures. This is one of the most important things that is in the way of our waking up. Is our belief system. Thinking that something is correct. So this is called epistemology. Kind of a funny word. But what it means is our theory, everyone has a theory as to what's true. No matter what, if they even think about it very much, or if they have a lot of metacognition and they've analyzed their belief systems their whole life. Like for me, for example, in college, I studied philosophy, and that's when I started really thinking about my belief systems. I even started thinking about those back in high school when I started noticing my white privilege. So when I saw my white privilege, I realized that it's basically built off of these belief structures that were taught to me. So learning how to go beyond those or let those fall away, because a lot of belief structures are just houses of cards. Excuse me. So just letting those fall away. We don't need to stand on belief structures very much. One of our main belief structures is our politics. So let go of your politics and really see politics from your heart and not your mind. It's really easy to vote when you're voting from your heart. You just kind of have a deep intuition as to who is the better candidate. And then you're not stuck between these belief structures, or I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat. That tends to, we start to overthink in our ego minds when we're really identifying with a particular political party. Another one is religion, even if you're an atheist. Okay? Atheism is a type of religion in a sense, because it's also a belief structure about spirituality. So any belief structure about how God and spirituality and consciousness works, I would call that like a religion, basically. And having a very open religion, where there's not too many strict rules, that really your religion is more tied to your spirituality, your consciousness, your awareness, and your compassion. So really having just some values in life. Choose 3 of your favorite values. So for example, maybe it's consciousness, compassion, and joy. Consciousness, compassion, and joy. And just living those 3 values to the fullest extent. And whenever something doesn't give you joy, give you consciousness, and I can't remember the 3 I said, consciousness, joy, and compassion. When something isn't aligned with that, then we let that fall away, right? It's not necessarily an important belief or even a useful belief. Okay, so finally, what I have here is meditation. So of course, meditation. So like I said, getting started with meditation practice. Some of the most important ones for the mind and reducing the overthinking is Zen. So if you want to start a Zen practice or learn the basics of how to do Zen sitting meditation, also called Zazen, it just means just sit. So learning how to just sit in Zen and basically focusing on your breath by counting your breaths. So we know we did 3 deep breaths. Basically, do 10 mindful breaths and then start back at 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So just kind of going back and forth. And then setting a timer, for between 10 minutes to an hour and do that. So that's basically the basics of Zen. But really, you should study it yourself if that interests you. And then self-inquiry. So you could study Ramana Maharshi and self-inquiry, his theory of self-inquiry. Really, what this is inquiring into the self, right? So the self is the sense of I or the sense of me. So inquiring or investigating or contemplating what is the I am. So contemplating the I am, And you see that the I am is primary to the thoughts, right? That the thoughts is the mind that happens inside of the space in which all things occur. Okay, so again, I have the phrase, basically self-inquiry brings us to the be the space in which all things occur. So things, what I mean by things is even thoughts. So all of our senses, our five senses, one of them, I believe, the sixth one is the mind. So our mind senses thoughts, right? So getting in touch with what is the root of the mind? What is the root of the mind, right? Or what is the root of my ego? What is the root of the me or the I am? So finding the roots of these, right? And that might bring you to a space in which all things occur, right? Even your own consciousness. Okay, so The Way of Zen by Alan Watts is a great book. Okay, so next, Cyrus Black. So learning more about Zen, again, is a great one. Alan Watts, listening to a lot of Alan Watts can help. There's lots of Alan Watts podcasts on YouTube for free. So also, yeah, a good one is finding a teacher that you like, or finding someone that you like who talks about these things, who they seem to embody what they're saying as well. So yeah, finding someone that you like about spirituality in general is important, or self-help, or philosophy. Having a favorite philosopher or poet. Really reading more philosophy and poetry really helps as well. Poetry really brings you into that sense of like everything is art. So even artists, people who are painting, do a lot of painting. You know, they're looking at life in a specific way that is a little bit more focused on what's here and right now, rather than the overthinking. So I would focus on that. All right. So that's what I have for today. Hopefully you can take away something from what I have. Again, we do Tuesday talks every Tuesday at 6:30 Central US. Okay. I live in Minnesota, so we do 6:30 on Tuesdays. If you want to join the chat on YouTube, you can certainly do that. And I have it on Zoom as well. So one last comment here. Cyrus Black says, even some movies can help. Yeah, certain movies. But having the overall idea of reducing the amount of TV and even loud music also can be distracting. So overall, having the idea that we can try and reduce that kind of stuff, but also seeing that there's value in certain songs and certain movies, value to our thank you, Cyrus. So yeah, hopefully you guys got something out of that. So I'll see you guys next week. The last thing I'll say here is really enjoy the process. Try and enjoy the process of learning more about philosophy or learning more about meditation. It's not just a grind. I know it seems like a grind when you're trying to achieve all these goals, but try and simplify it, or try and enjoy it as well. When you have really big breakthroughs, it really feels very good. So really trying to keep kind of a loose feel to the process, but also taking it serious. Finding that balance between having a lot of inner motivation and seriousness and earnestness, but then also just having fun. Okay, so that's it. I'll see you guys.